My name is Synnøve. I have written this article in collaboration with Wilhelm Wie and Hercules Stadianis, and the title of our article is, as you can see here, Creating and Evaluating a Synthetic Norwegian Clinical Corpus for De-Identification. As you all may know, electronic health records contain a lot of useful information that could be utilized by researchers in order to improve the future healthcare. However, this information is difficult to access as it contains sensitive information, also called protected health information or PHI. In order to get access to this information, it needs to be de-identified. And this can be done by using de-identification tools. But to make sure the quality of such a tool is high, they need to be evaluated using a gold standard. And a gold standard is an annotated clinical text, and gold standards exist for larger languages like English, while for smaller languages like Norwegian, there are none. So, the aim of this research was to create and evaluate a Norwegian gold standard corpus. So what we did, in short, was that we created the gold standard in different steps that I will go through in a moment, and then we evaluated it by letting an existing Norwegian de-identification tool de-identify our corpus, which we will also get back to. So first, we downloaded an already existing corpus of Norwegian clinical text called the NorSynth Clinical Corpus. This is a synthetic corpus describing patients' family history relating to cases of cardiac disease. And this corpus only contains a few words that can be characterized as protected health information. Therefore, we extended it with sentences and words containing such information. Yeah, and this leads me to the definition of protected health information, which doesn't really exist. So these are the categories that we decided to use: first name, last name, age, healthcare unit, phone number, social security number, date, which were divided into date full and date part, and location. Yeah, and here is an example of an extended sentence. The Norwegian sentence is of course the original one, and in English the original sentence was: the mother apparently has some heart problems. She is 75 years old. And then we added, and lives at Bakklandet Menighetsomsorgssenter. Yes, and the next thing we did was that we annotated the corpus. And to be able to then evaluate the annotations, which was the next step, two different Norwegian-speaking people annotated the corpus separately from each other. And I should also mention that we made some simple annotation guidelines with some simple instructions that both annotators followed when annotating. Yeah, and here are some examples of annotations. Here you can see the tag age, for instance, is surrounding the age, like 75 years. And the tag healthcare unit is also surrounding the whole healthcare unit entity. Yeah. And then we evaluated the annotations, as I said, measuring the inter-annotator agreement using precision, recall, and F measure. And finally, we made the gold standard, or the final gold standard, by adding all the annotations that both annotators agreed on, and of the annotations that they disagreed on, we went through each and one of them and decided which one to include and which one not to include. Yeah, and the final gold standard got the name NorSynth Clinical PHI.
Moving on to part 2. The gold standard was tested by running an existing de-identification application prototype on the gold standard. The hybrid system and test approach will be briefly explained in the following slides. The sklearn CRF suite was used for the CRF model, and the rules were handmade, expanding on existing available rules. Hybrid structure. The CRF model was trained on Nordnet, an open, manually annotated dataset of mostly Norwegian news text. The table on this slide shows which methods are used for each PHI category. CRF is used for every PHI category that could be matched to Nordnet's labels, more on that on the next slide, and regex is used for PHI categories that are not annotated or do not exist in the training set. Furthermore, the rules for dates were developed for detecting all dates without distinguishing between date full and date part, so they were combined into one entity. Label matching. As the training set Nordnet and the test set NorSynth Clinical PHI use different labeling schemes or labels, they were matched according to this table. Modifications. Some modifications were made to the system. While not generalizable, we believe the modifications resulted in a more accurate evaluation of the hybrid system and the gold standard within the research constraints. First, the healthcare unit label and location label were merged. This choice was made based on several factors, best explained in the paper. Second, the multi-token instances of rule predicted entities were changed to where only the first token were counted towards the evaluation.
Yeah, and here are the final results of the hybrid system's de-identification of the gold standard after the modifications previously mentioned. And as expected, the CRF model performed better on the PHI entities, which were common and well matched between the two datasets, compared to the other entities. And also expected, rules-based entities show high precision but not so high recall, likely due to the relative simplicity. And here you can see the amount and distribution of protected health information in the final gold standard corpus. To the second left, you see the original corpus, then you see the amount that we added, and finally, to the right, you see the final corpus. And as you can see, we added 186 instances of protected health information, and the final gold standard consists of 409 PHI instances. Age is the most common category, followed by names and dates. Yeah, and in total, the 409 PHI instances make up around 5% of the whole text. And the inter-annotator agreement was high, as you can see here, an overall F measure of 0.94. All scores were high except location, which was 0.50. Okay, so what does this say about the gold standard's quality? How well can it act as a gold standard for de-identification of Norwegian clinical text? What is not very supporting is the fact that the content of this text is very specific to the area of cardiology and not to all parts of electronic health records, so maybe it's not fully representative. It's also very small, which means that there might be a lack of variety. However, similarities with other gold standards exist. For instance, the distribution of the PHI categories and the PHI density are similar. and the inter-annotator agreement score, which was high, 0.94, also indicates that the annotators understood the language in a similar way. And finally, the de-identification tool did manage to de-identify the gold standard to an expected degree, and it didn't detect any unannotated protected health information. So I think the created gold standard has a potential, and we really encourage you to further expand it and to conduct more evaluation research. And what is very good is that it is synthetic and can therefore be made publicly available, which it has already been. So here you can just feel free to download it, and yeah, please use it. Thanks!